stunning looks than swift.
Semi-finals day, effectively, in the Asia Cup. Let's hope weather does not play spoil sport, as Pakistan and Sri Lanka have plenty to play for, amongst other things, a place against India in the final on Sunday. So we build up to that game, which for the moment doesn't give us the best of news as far as the rain is concerned in Colombo, but let's hope we have just the right amount of weather for the right amount of cricket. We have managed results in the Super Fours thus far. This is the Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricket for Matchday, powered by JBL. Anil Kumble with me. Seems very relaxed, Anil Kumble. Doesn't quite matter which way this game goes. But is Farveez Maharoof as relaxed? I think so. 15 minutes from the Premadasa. Urooj Mumtaz is a little bit concerned about the weather right now. So let me first go to Farveez, who will double up as our weatherman from his mansion just a few yards away from the Premadasa, and look outside and tell me, Farveez, are we going to get some cricket soon?
I hope so, that everyone is looking forward to, and the talk in the country is that it's going to be a big game. Sri Lanka, Pakistan always at the Arbreda Stadium. If you ask my knowledge, which is zero when it comes to weather, it doesn't look promising. It looks dark and it looks gloomy. Yes, as you said, 15 minutes away. At the moment, not so promising, but the prediction is that the cricket will be played. There will be interruptions, but hopefully we will have a game in hand.
That's all I needed you to do. I don't need any weather expertise. I just need to peep outside the window and tell me it looks dark and gloomy. That's good enough. That's pretty much what I needed. It's not what Pakistan though want to look at, Urooj Mumtaz. A no result or a washout doesn't help them. The Sri Lanka will go through if that is the case, and they've also announced a playing 11 which sees 5 changes. We're going to come to that in a second, but this is where we start discussing what if it's a reduced game. Do you want to then tweak the playing 11 you announced yesterday?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they can, because they haven't given it in at the toss, so they can make that. They probably won't, but given the fact that Haris comes in for Fakhr, actually helps if it's a reduced game. They can also then bump Rizwan up and go for a T20 kind of format. But all in all, I think they have themselves to blame. They've shot themselves in the foot, where there was a laboured chase against Nepal, and the way they came out with absolutely complete lack of intent against India. So if it does come down to the run rate, Pakistan probably only have themselves to blame.
All right, we'll have a look at that points table just to confirm that there is nothing Pakistan can really do if we don't get a game. Sri Lanka have things in their hands. Washout takes them through. Though you would say, from the evidence of what we've seen in terms of form and historically as a fixture in the Asia Cup, Sri Lanka have the edge, especially at home. We'll come to some head-to-head matchups fascinatingly. This would be a good game though, Anil. It's not like you can call a clear favourite here, even though I think with the way Sri Lanka troubled India, maybe you'd lean towards them?
Yes, on this kind of a surface. I mean, what we saw when Sri Lanka played India, on that surface, I would certainly back Sri Lanka. And they looked a more settled playing 11. I mean, Pakistan have made 5 changes. I know a couple of changes were forced, but 5 changes before an important game, as close to as a World Cup, is a bit of a, I'm not sure what the thinking is. So I hope it works for Pakistan. That's what they will be hoping, that these 5 changes will work. Sri Lanka is always a tough team to beat. And on a surface that we saw against India, their spinners have been really good. Pakistan spinners are yet to sort of come to the party. So that will be the biggest challenge.
So I'm fascinated to know about when a management decides to make 5 changes, like you say. Let's cut them some slack. 3 are forced in Naseem Haris and possibly Salman Agha too with injury. What if you anyway had decided that already? 1 more failure for Fakhr and maybe I'll bring in Haris. Now you have these 3 changes at a different part of the team. Do you sense that it's still okay to make it, or because you've lost 3 players there, then you say, okay, no, even if I wanted this change, I'm not going to make it now?
Yeah, I think it's about what you want to do from a team's perspective. And from outside, we may feel that Fakhr perhaps needed 1 more opportunity, but from within the management, you sort of get a sense of the mindset of the player, whether he is really looking positive. Because sometimes, yes, no matter what, it's good to get a break. Someone as experienced as a Fakhr Zaman. There's been many instances where people have got a break and then suddenly it clicks and then you come back and start scoring. So maybe Pakistan management realized that this was the time for him to get a break And there have been a few forced changes, so it looks as though they made 5 changes.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at that team, and in a way, I like that they've kept with the trend of announcing their team. This could have been the perfect game to not announce anything and just wait after a big defeat against India, the uncertainty around injuries and the weather today. But they stuck true to what they've done in this Asia Cup. And Mohammad Haris, who's had success in the T20 format, will partner Imamul Haq. What sort of dynamic does it give them? I'll go to Urooj in a moment for that. Saud Shakil played the series in Sri Lanka against Afghanistan recently. Salman Agha took a nasty blow while trying to sweep Ravindra Jadeja in the last game. And of course, the two big ones, Haris Rauf and Naseem Shah, both out. And Zaman Khan's been drafted in. Mohammad Wasim Jr. we thought would get a game. And they've been alternating Nawaz and Fahim Ashraf depending on the surface. That perhaps gives us an indication of what surface it'll be. Now, Urooj, does it really set, say, a sense of panic that they've made 5 changes, or is this more an understandable one? You wouldn't be too worried, even though 5 changes, whatever the context, does sound like a lot.
Yeah, I mean, but 3 out of those 5, Haris Rauf and Naseem Shah, forced, of course. Even Fahim Ashraf and Nawaz are always going to be a swap for swap depending on the surface. And looking at the kind of surface that supported spin so heavily versus Sri Lanka versus India, that change was also probably on the cards. Again, surface driven. Salman Ali Agha, not wearing a helmet, took a blow to his eye. I saw in the practice session yesterday, that is right, I was considerably swollen. So again, maybe a swap there. But Fakhar Zaman, I do understand what Anil is saying about maybe sometimes these kind of players need a break. But him and Imamul Haq have been opening the batting order for a couple of years consistently. And irrespective of his failures, yes, they're far in between at the moment. The 3 centuries on the bounce came against New Zealand earlier in the year. But having said that, would you really go into India in your first 11 without Fakhar there? I really don't think so. So that sounds to me a little bit more of a panic. They do have Abdullah Shafiq, who's been their opener, the 3rd opener with the team for a while, very technically sound. So that sort of, for Haris to jump above Abdullah Shafiq and then been given go, that to me sounds a little bit of panic. The other 4, they seem like 5 on the card, but the other 4 do have justifiable reasons.
All right, fair enough. I want to talk about Mohammad Haris in just a moment because this is an exciting player, perhaps gives them a different dynamic. Let me get thought from Farveez as well, though. As far as these 2 teams go, Farveez, it's funny that Sri Lanka and Pakistan, who played a lot of cricket over time, have not played an ODI since 2019. And the record is more in favor of Sri Lanka when it comes to Asia Cup cricket. But in recent times, Pakistan have had the edge over them. This is a good fixture. The 5 changes that you see coming from Pakistan, does that in some ways, as we just look at that, 10-4 to Sri Lanka in the Asia Cup. Since 2017, though, they haven't won against Pakistan. That's around about the time that you called it time, isn't it, Farveez?
I reckon it might be 8-1 today if we have some play, hopefully, after 6 years. Just a matter on Mohammad Haris, what Urooj just mentioned about. All I can think of, Mohammad Haris playing for the LPL, B-Love, he opened the batting, and he was in such a good form. And I was quite surprised that he wasn't looked in place of Fakhar Zaman, even against the series against Afghanistan, which I managed to cover in Sri Lanka. And Fakhar Zaman looked not so in a good nick, whereas Mohammad Haris is waiting in the wings, scored a lot of runs, opening the batting for B-Love. Before that, the ACC Emerging Asia Cup, he was captaining, but he was batting in the middle order, was a revelation. So I think it's a matter of time, and I think more than a panic change. I think because Mohammad Haris has played in this very stadium about 5-6 games, he will know the conditions better. And just because he's coming for a big game, I don't think he'll be a panic replacement for me, because I find Mohammad Haris a good player. And the others, Saud Shakil especially, he's a good sweeper. He can slog sweep, he can reverse sweep, he can play the natural sweep. And I saw him a little in the Emerging Asia Cup, as well as the only game he played against Afghanistan. And Ramesh Raja, while I was working with him, he highly rated him, especially saying that he's a good player against spin. And the way Sri Lanka bowled in the last game would have tempted Saud Shakil's inclusion. I think Salman Ali Agha has a great technique. Unfortunately, he got hit in the eye or wherever. But I think that's a blessing in disguise, because Salman Ali Agha is a naturally corrected, sort of a player. But in these kind of pitches, you need someone unorthodox. And I think Saud Shakil brings into that table.
All right, Urooj, I've seen a very almost confident endorsement of these Pakistan changes from Farveez, if you want to respond to that. He likes Mohammad Haris, and quite frankly, I don't follow as much of Pakistan cricket as you do and Farveez does. What we saw when he just got suddenly drafted into the T20 Men's World Cup last year, he seems an exciting player, and that top order can do with a bit of someone who's a bit of a dasher, can't it?
Oh, completely agreed with what Farveez has said with regards to Haris being aggressive, Haris being versatile. He's not afraid. He moves laterally on the crease, comes up and down as well, doesn't mind taking the quick bowlers on with the fine funky shots earlier on as well. All said and done. And it also makes sense considering Pakistan's power play score in the Asia Cup has been something like 44 or something, well below the rest of the teams in the Asia Cup. But you look at his numbers there, I mean, very few ODI matches, very few list A career as well. My only reason for using the word panic was that if that was the case, when Pakistan was 2-0 up in the Afghanistan series, even then he didn't get a go. So that was my only thing. When you're preparing for someone who might be the obvious change, where do you use him? Because this one's definitely a forced change and it was time required. Fakhr wasn't going anywhere with the way he's been slashing and completely not picking up the length. But that was my thing, that you sort of keep the boys who you want with that in your mind are going to be your first changes. You give them a go along the way, not force in a big game situation like it's turned up here.
You put yourself in such situations, I guess. I mean, even from an India point of view, at times you think, oh, you know, could India have gone with Jaiswal a little earlier, Tilak Verma a little earlier? Haris seems to be that kind of batter. What does it take to finally make that decision? I know there's a safe option, and I don't know which way you'd lean, Anil, on these things, but you think, oh, it's so exciting, let's get this guy up and let's get him to play. Who knows?
Yeah, I think so. You know, sometimes you may have to just take that based on what you're seeing at practice and the mindset of these players when you're with the team, because from outside it's different. But when you're actually within the group, then you sort of understand the mindset of these players. The other aspect also is, you know, Fakhr Zaman, when he first came onto the scene, was a destructive player. And I think the last few innings that I've seen, he's sort of gone into a shell. We saw that even against India. You know, the only shot that he tried to hit was the one that he got out. So it feels like, you know, Pakistan is wanting Fakhr to be that player who's going to go there and then start taking the game on from ball one. But maybe that's something that's adding pressure to him because he's struggling a bit with form. So yes, this could be a possible you know, change in the way they're going to approach. And if you know, Mohammad Haris comes in and gets those runs for them, then it solves a little bit of a problem. At least they can have a backup going into the World Cup.
I'm funny you say that if he gets runs today, does that solve a problem?
No, not
or
really.
Does that create a problem?
No, but it may wake up Fakhr Zaman, because, you know, it's important sometimes that, you know, yes, sometimes senior players, they go through that period where you're struggling for form, and it's just a trigger in the mind. It's got nothing to do with your skill. It's just the mind that you need to trigger in these kind of situations.
All right, we're getting some news, good news from Colombo. If there is no further rain, we expect a toss at 2:50 and a game at 3:15. So first ball at 3:15. So that's what we're looking at least a 15-minute delay as far as the scheduled start goes. But if we do not get any more rain, we could have a toss in about 7 minutes. So we'll know more then. But this is a nice chat here with Haris playing and the changes that Pakistan have made. We'll come to a few other things as well on a Sri Lankan point of view. But since we've brought this up, do you sense, with all the years you've had working with younger players and now the T20 players, it's a better time or an easier time to throw a young player with a T20 reputation into ODI cricket than, say, it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
No, I think you sort of, if you're throwing in a young player, you sort of define the same role. You don't add pressure saying you're supposed to you know, do this for us. It's a 10-over power play, so you go there and then express yourself. Because in India, in the World Cup, you're going to get some really good wickets to bat on. And most teams will take advantage of those first few overs in the power play. So you want batters to go there and then start dominating, or at least the intent to dominate from ball one. We saw that the first game when India played Pakistan. Yes, the pitch was a bit up and down, but the second game when the two Indian batters, openers, walked out, the intent was different, and suddenly we saw Shaheen Afridi not getting his line, the length. So that's what happens with bowlers. The moment you start coming in and showing that intent from ball one, irrespective of the surface, irrespective of the confidence of the bowler, it certainly starts creating a doubt in the bowler's mind. And that is something that players like, during my days, Sanath Jayasuriya would sort of evoke a Chris Gayle when he walks in. So these kind of players are hard to bowl at, and you get a lot more loose deliveries to the other batter as well. So that's what you want from your opening batters. And possibly, Harris today has that opportunity, irrespective of the surface, irrespective of how it's going to turn, you still need to play the same role. So you just define that role and give it to them rather than saying, okay, establish yourself. I don't think that's the conversation that you would want to have with a young player.
Yeah, I guess Sri Lanka and Pakistan in some ways, Urooj, Farveez, are in similar situation as far as the type of batters they have at the top of the order. There's a little more old school ODI opening batters. Is there a sense that that's our best bet, so let's stick with this, there's a World Cup coming? Or would you still not mind and say, yeah, this is something that was needed, let's give it a shot right now, let's change it up and see how it goes. Urooj, maybe you can just add into what Anil was saying here, because Harris's numbers that we saw in ODI cricket, they're not very flattering, are they? And now we're trying to understand, is this guy a dasher or is he actually capable of having an impact in ODI cricket?
I mean, it's a like-for-like swap, right? Like they want someone who's aggressive, who will take the bowling on up front, and obviously to provide that impetus in the power play. Like you said, we've got Imam, Babar, Rizwan, Saud, who all like to take their time, construct an innings, and it's not until Iftikhar at 6 do we have somebody who can actually take the attack on with that kind of game that they have. So for Haris in his T20, in his what we've seen of his T20, and Farveez also mentioned in the Lanka Premier League, what he is a confident young boy. He's confident. He won't be overawed or overwhelmed by the occasion. That is one huge advantage that he does have, and he won't be afraid to take the bowlers on. And I really hope that, like what Anil said, the team management at the think tank haven't tried to change what they are trying to get from him. That probably will remain key. I think the verdict has to be go out there and play your own game, because the idea probably here is to make use of that power play. And sometimes maybe putting a young player in there without too much expectation probably can work for you, because you're not relying on him completely to win you the game or do something completely dramatical or magical. So I think it all works in favor of Haris, given the kind of player and the individual that he is. And so I really hope it does pay off for Pakistan.
Farveez, anything to add on that before we move on?
A good point to add what Anil just said about when a bowler is bowling and bowling a good line and length, and the batsman is stuck at the crease and just playing the normal way and traditional way. A fast bowler, if I put myself in that shoe, I'd be very happy if the bowler as a batter doesn't do anything. As soon as batter comes down the track, does something different, gives himself some room, it's going to be tough work. We saw Rohit as soon as he came down the track with Shubman Gill. It puts lots of pressure and creates a lot of doubt on the bowler's mind, and naturally you're going to shorten your length. And as soon as you shorten length, the swing and the seam goes out of the window. So this is where I think player like Mohammad Haris, young, everything to gain, nothing to lose sort of attitude, can really hurt Sri Lanka if he gets going.
And the other aspect also is, if you look back at the India-Sri Lanka game, the reason that India got to 200 plus was at the start, because the openers got off to a good start. So Pakistan would have felt that, okay, if it's the same kind of surface that you're going to face, you need to utilize the power play. You need your batters to take on the faster bowlers that Sri Lanka have. Because once the spinner comes, and if it is the same kind of pitch, it's not going to be easy for the batters to score runs.
All right, brilliant. About 2 minutes to go to what is a slightly delayed toss. And Anil's point is well illustrated if you look at the numbers for the lowest run rates in ODI cricket in the first 10 overs this calendar year. Pakistan going in 4.64. So that's only behind. What are England doing there? 4.46. Okay. I'm changing everything I think about this graphic now. It's fine. They're okay over there. What? Can someone explain that? What are England doing there?
They go at higher in a test match. Higher than that.
Okay, fine. I'm going to ignore that. Yeah, it's fine. It's the template to success or whatever. Remember, ODI cricket, there's not a lot of it that's played these days. So we should take that into perspective. But yeah, for the sake of our argument being valid, Pakistan need a bit of a push at the start. I can't even get myself to say that with a straight face. Toss is going to be in a couple of minutes. Surface is important on the kind of team you pick. Now, Nawaz's inclusion suggests we might get a surface like we saw between India and Sri Lanka. I'm just seeing pictures of the monitor now that the covers are only just coming off. They would have presumably been on throughout. The toss is in a minute. Do you at times not even get to see the surface before the toss comes on the day of the game?
Yeah, possibly.
It happens?
Yeah, possibly. No, just about. The captain just walks in. Yes, the covers could be half and half, so you just sort of get a peep and okay, just decide. But I think the pitch is going to be the same. It's more than looking at the pitch. You need to start looking up. So that's the challenge that both teams have, especially Pakistan, because Sri Lanka, if it's a washout, they walk into the finals. So Pakistan will not just be looking at the pitch, but they'll also be looking up, hoping that they'll get a full game.
That's an interesting point Anil Kumble makes, because you think with weather around, you bowl first. That has been a risky choice, Urooj, in the Super Fours especially. We've seen batting first being the way to go. Pakistan need to force the issue here more than Sri Lanka. Do they look to chase because there's weather, or do they bat first, given what we've seen in the Super Fours so far?
I mean, again, going back to the India-Pakistan game, he probably did choose to chase because of weather around, and I mean, no reserve day here, but that didn't play out in Pakistan's favor. Going back to Sri Lanka-Bangladesh game, again, the home captain repeated himself again, saying that as opposed to weather, the conditions under lights with the ball streaming around and with purchase to spinners, he would always bat first. So almost sets the trend. I think even batting first, percentage of captains choosing to bat first also far above the captains choosing to bowl first. So I just feel with the pressure game, you've included Haris in there, runs on the board will matter, and then you back your seamers and your spinners to do the job for you.
Farveez, your 2 bits on what a captain and what's a difficult decision, I guess, looking at what the weather, the situation of the tournament, and the trend in the Super Four so far. Bat first, bowl first?
Definitely, I agree with Anil and Urooj that bat first always, when especially is on, put the runs on the board, and team batting second will always have the pressure of chasing down with the scoreboard. So I reckon, yes, the back of your mind, you'll always think of the weather, but you have to control what's controllable. You go to control what is uncontrollable. We saw India-Pakistan game where Babar won the toss. He had the easily could have batted and got a 260 and put the pressure on the Indian team. He didn't take it. So I think for Pakistan, they would have learned a lesson. They would have bat first for sure. And Sri Lanka, 100% they will bat as well.
Such an important game, virtual semi-final. Shouldn't we have a reserve day, Farveez, Urooj?
Why not? Why not?
No? Okay. All right, just having some fun. Urooj is just smiling right now. She doesn't want to say anything more. Okay.
Well, reserve day didn't go in Pakistan's favor, so I think they'll probably be like, give us a 20-over game and then we've got this.
All we can do is just look at the lighter side, because we're all on the same side on this. But anyway, and we have an India-Bangladesh game tomorrow. One thing we have seen, though, is some great crowds coming into the Premadasa. That last game, it really had everyone at the edge of their seats, and it was a packed Premadasa. What's got the Sri Lankan public suddenly interested again? And, will we likely see that same turnout today in the Asia Cup? Sudarshanan is our man in Colombo, braving the weather, and he's got us the lowdown on that.
Two teams with similar structure, a reliable but misfiring top order, a lower middle order that's a bit wobbly, and a bowling attack that's making the right noises take on each other in a bid to make the final of the Men's Asia Cup. Sri Lanka versus Pakistan on the outset looks to be the game you want to be at as a fan, but will we see a high turnout? The India-Sri Lanka match proved a glimpse of what everybody wants to see, a near full crowds, and perhaps that is a sign of things to come. The crowds have been a bit absent in this Asia Cup, and that's perhaps down to 2 reasons. The first of them being the ticket prices. The tickets for the entire Asia Cup have been very highly priced in the sense in a country that's affected by economic crisis. The prices were really set about 40 to 50% higher than what it would have been for a bilateral series. But for the Colombo leg, the prices have been reduced. Except for the final, the rest of the games, the lowest price of a ticket is 480 Lanka rupees, and the highest, which is the VVIP section, is priced at rupees 8,000. For the final, the lowest price of a ticket is rupees 640, and the highest again is 40,000, which is the VVIP section. The second reason, of course, is the weather forecast. Throughout the Pallekele leg as well as the initial games of the Colombo leg, we saw rain playing a major part. But for the India-Sri Lanka game, there was only a half an hour to 45-minute interruption due to rain, which was as predicted. And that meant the crowds could enjoy and create the atmosphere that everybody loves to see on a broadcast. Close to 65 to 70% of the stands were full. And every time Sri Lanka did well, be it via Dunit Wellalage spinning a web around Indian batters or during the chase while hitting boundaries. They cheered and had fun. Eventually, the result didn't go their way, but it was a day that everybody remembers for the crowd, and hopefully that's a sign of things to come.
Excellent from Sudarshan. And yeah, it was great to see Farveez, wasn't it? Because I'm genuinely concerned of the ODI turnouts for this format, even if you're playing, even if the home team is playing. But what we saw in the last game was the kind of atmosphere that takes us back to ODI cricket from when it was perhaps at the peak of its popularity.
To start us off, it was a brilliant setup by Sudarshan, the way he explained everything. I thought the biggest issue was the prices of the tickets. I mean, as he correctly said, Sri Lanka went through economic crisis. People are slowly but surely coming back into normal life, and all of a sudden, tickets prices are skyrocketed. They're not going to come as long as it comes down. And we saw that during the last game when the crowds are in. It's like the Sri Lankans' 12th man, the support Sri Lanka had, and being a past player, I know for a fact, playing at the Mumtaz Stadium, especially one day in a day-night game, it's always 12th man supporting us right throughout. So Sri Lanka will be hoping that the crowd will turn up today. Yes, it's a working day, but pretty sure that Sri Lankans will be turning out in numbers as long as the rain stays away.
I think when we talk about the future of ODI cricket, Anil, it's something that has to be carefully looked at. And in our part of the world, maybe in England, you still get good turnouts for Test and ODI cricket. But in our part of the world, you sense it's a big responsibility for the administrators to ensure, for starters, it's affordable and easy to come to a ground.
Yes, and also the fact that, from a player's perspective as well, you would want to play in front of a full house, packed house. And the atmosphere is very different, even on television, or even when you're watching away from the ground. A packed house certainly gives you the atmosphere that you expect in a sporting encounter. So yes, you would want to look at all of these factors to ensure that you have a packed house in every match that you play.
Yeah, of course, and we mention all this knowing full well that it has been really difficult for a number of people, especially in India, to even secure tickets for the World Cup. So we're hoping that eases out before the tournament does. Of course, there's extensive literature on our site. Sid Monga's written a wonderful piece about the challenge that Indian fans face when they have to try and go to stadiums or purchase tickets. But it's nice to see that midway through the Asia Cup, the ACC has identified that, and we saw a great turnout at Colombo for the last game, and we're hoping that that's repeated today. Right, let's just go back to that Pakistan team. We've mentioned a lot about Mohammad Haris at the top, and Farveez and Urooj have also given us some insight on Saud Shakil. But let's talk about the fast bowlers, shall we? Mohammad Wasim Jr. gets another goal. This guy is quick, he's talented. Tell us a bit more about Zaman Khan, though, Urooj, and what we can expect from him.
Yeah, a wonderful prodigy of Lahore Qalandars, in fact, and has now bowled 2 seasons in with Shaheen Shah Afridi. And again, the confidence that comes from him, along with bowling with Shaheen Shah Afridi, he's got a slingy, low arm action, and that's why he's very deceptible, because the trajectory is not from above. And he's got that in-dip into the right-hander, so he will be very effective in the middle, especially during the back end, because that's where he's played. Again, a T20 prodigy. Again, was playing a lot of T20 franchise cricket as well, and because he's quick, he's probably very, very attractive to watch as well. And the good thing about him is, again, with every bowler, is control. I mean, very little margin of error towards the death overs, and coming in at that speed, sometimes the ball does fly off the bat even faster if you miss those lengths just by a fraction. So it'll be interesting time to watch. Again, comes in a pressure game, but he will have the support of his I think, senior by very few years. I think there's only 1 year gap between Shaheen Shah Afridi and Zaman Khan, but he has bowled with him, so I think it'll be a good test for him to come up in an all-important game, but a well-deserved position as well, given the injuries.
Yeah, just turned 22 4 days ago. Zaman Khan featured in the 100, has played just the 7 List A games in total, and once the weather clears, he will be presented his ODI cap. So that's something exciting. So far as it looks like the 2 slingy fast bowlers in world cricket are going to be playing in the same game today.
What a wonderful sight to watch. I think Zaman Khan, I watched a bit of him in the PSL and the 100. I thought he had the pace, he had the variation, but I just hope Sri Lanka puts him under pressure. I mean, playing his debut game in a big occasion, I think Sri Lanka could, do well to put him under pressure. And also, Sri Lanka had played Matishapati in Reds, and they know what to expect, what not to expect. And you just want to put the pressure and test out Mohammad Wasim, who hasn't played much cricket lately. He played last in the Afghanistan-Pakistan the third ODI at the Arapunda Stadium, which he bowled quick with pace and bounce. He was very impressive. So I reckon for Sri Lanka, it's all about putting some pressure on these Pakistani fast bowlers. Yes, they are good. They're 140 plus, but take it up the chin and go after them. And I think that's where Sri Lanka could actually go 1 feet ahead than the Pakistan attack.
Yeah, when you coach around the T20 circuit, I'm sure when you have these open nets or trials or scouting, you've been a scout too, Anil, that perhaps since Lasith Malinga, a lot more bowlers are trying to bowl like this. It's still not something that is easy and finds its way to the highest level. We've literally got only 2 examples right now, but it's not something that India seem to have found, a slingy bowler. Pakistan seem to have one right now. What can we expect from him today?
I think one thing that you've always seen Pakistani bowlers come with pace. That's something that you've consistently seen through the years, that the bowlers who come and make their debut are all having a bit of pace. So that's a good thing. But action, I mean, if you're looking at white ball cricket, you're all constantly looking at some sort of variation or a slight deception that you want from a bowler, whether he's a fast bowler or a spinner. So that will always be the case. Either you have the skill in your hand or in your action. So yes, and if you have both, then it becomes even more troublesome for the batter. So you're constantly looking for those kind of chances and taking a chance. So yeah, good luck to him today. Hopefully the weather gods will be kind.
Yeah, well, at the moment they're not, because we should have had a slightly delayed toss by now.
Farveez.
Yeah, but the covers are coming back on just as I speak, much to the sadistic pleasure of Farveez Maharoof for some reason.
It's more than the pleasure. I before the covers were on the TV, I looked at the window out of my room and I saw raindrops. And I said, 50 minutes away, that's going to rain. It's going to be a stop and start day. I mean, the prediction says that it's going to rain, and you will have some areas where it won't rain. But the challenge would be the groundsman, how quickly they can cover the areas of concern when the showers come through. Because last couple of days, without any early marks, it just splashes down for 10-15 minutes and it goes away. So this is something that will be challenging for the groundsman as well today.
I'm glad Farveez brings that up, because it's worth mentioning. You don't often, the unsung heroes of these kinds of high-profile tournaments, the ground staff in Sri Lanka, braced through some serious weather and some difficult situations, and they've done an excellent job to actually give us a result in every Super 4 game. Yes, they had the reserve day to contend with, but that's even more hard work for them. So we wouldn't be what we are if we didn't dedicate a little time to them on our show. And Sudarshan is hard at work in Colombo. He found out a little more about how they get the covers on and managed to cover what's a big ground at the R. Premadasa.
2 of the 3 games in Palakele, this Men's Asia Cup, were affected by rain. The talk in the lead up to the Colombo leg was about showers and the weather forecast. One of the sights of a cricket match in Sri Lanka is the ground staff taking position on the boundary line as soon as they sense rain approaching. It's a sight we'd rather not prefer, but one that made us look behind the scenes of what goes into covering the cricket ground. The entire process of covering and uncovering a cricket ground in Sri Lanka is manual, and Godfrey Dabrera, the SLC National Curator, said that they have about 60 trained ground staff for this work. Surely with the manual process, it must take a lot of time to get the covers on. Nope. Talking specifically of the R. Premadasa Stadium, it takes about 30 to 45 minutes to cover the entire playing field, and about 15-20 minutes if there are heavy winds accompanying the rain. The process of uncovering the cricket ground is also methodical. They drain out water from covers to covers and then into the outermost perimeter into the drain. By doing it manually instead of using a super stopper, they save close to about an hour. The thing with the super stopper is it cannot be driven fast, and the water that it absorbs also has to be periodically drained out. Thereby, the manual work saves a bit of time. The covers are quite heavy because of the coastal winds that tend to accompany the rain in Sri Lanka, and each cover measuring about 100 feet to 100 feet costs between Lankan rupees 4 lakhs to 6 lakhs, and there are about 26 covers used to cover the entire field at the R. Premadasa Stadium. The Sri Lankan grounds are not like those in Australia and New Zealand, where the soil and the drainage facility means that there's no water accumulation on the ground. Given that Sri Lanka almost play their home cricket during the rainy season, they have to cover the entire playing field. Knowing all this won't perhaps reduce the frustration of a rain stoppage in a cricket match, but now we know what goes behind covering a cricket ground.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant that from Sudarshan, and also breaking some myths. At times you sit back in your chairs and go, okay, they don't have a super stopper, why can't they have a super stopper? Well, there's reason for it, and of course this is a subject and a story that is close to Farveez Maharoof's heart as well. Farveez?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a touching story since I was born next to the RPM, that's the stadium. That's my hometown. I mean, village, you can say, and area. And we used to volunteer ourselves to go and pull covers. I remember when I was 13, the 1997 Asia Cup was called the Pepsi Asia Cup. And a friend of mine who used to be the groundsman at the RPM Stadium gave me a call and said, "Why don't you come? They're looking for people to come and pull the covers." So I was a 13-year-old guy. I mean, quite small and not so strong enough to pull the covers, but I made sure I went there at least to give my side support. So, it's a nice little story that we will always look back at. When I see these things, all the big cricketers like Rohit, KL, Rahul, Virat, all of us, all of them were, praising the groundsman, and that's something that's very close to my heart since, I didn't worked as a profession, but it definitely gave my hand. I'll be having the love towards cricket in 1997.
1997, young man who watched Sri Lanka win the Asia Cup, the Pepsi Asia Cup. Anil Kumble was on the receiving end of that result. You remember watching him in the middle? He looked the same. He looked the same, didn't he? Yeah.
He had the big moustache and a long hair.
He did away with that. Yeah, but what a lovely story. And
yeah, it is.
Ground staff, etc. And of course, the international cricketers do come from there.
Yes, yes. No, I think Sri Lanka, like Farveez mentioned, and it's usually around the rainy season that you play most of your international cricket. I remember even at Gaul, you have I think prison inmates coming in and helping out with the covers. So it's a wonderful story, and we hope that they will have a quiet day today and not necessarily a stop-start. So yeah, that's what I think both Pakistan, I'm sure Pakistan would be looking at that.
I mean, since we are cheating and looking outside Farveez's window and trying to get an idea of the weather, I'm sure outside Urooj it's very clear. If we just had the Asia Cup as the original hosts should have had it, then we would have had a full uninterrupted tournament, wouldn't we, Urooj?
Period. Full stop. End of discussion.
Absolutely not a drop of rain in Multan or in Lahore. But as we just take some final comments, we know there's an indefinite delay now with the covers back onto the toss. So we'll have you covered on ESPN Cricinfo. But we spoke a lot about the Haris change. If it's just about Fakhar Zaman, could they have perceived perhaps a shortened game? And in which case it gives them more flexibility, Urooj? Otherwise, we were thinking maybe Rizwan Babar would have to come up, and these two openers don't quite suit a shortened game. But someone like Haris, if it is a shortened game, gives Pakistan a little more with the bat?
I think generally a shortened game gives Pakistan any advantage. Said this in the India-Pakistan game as well. And with now Haris in, who is ideally a T20 opener per se, and then you can probably rejig depending on how many overs you do get. Anything above 35 overs probably still closer to an ODI game than a T20 game for me. But it does give them that flexibility with now Haris in there.
And there's Zaman Khan too, who's got T20 credentials. So there are T20 players in this team. They'd fancy a shortened game. Right, we're just going to have to leave it there, I guess. It's getting heavier from the pictures I'm seeing. Farveez, confirm that for me, please. Maybe shut your windows if it's getting heavier.
It is getting heavier, and it doesn't look promising because it's got really, really dark very quickly. And as I said, when it comes down pouring, and it stops and it builds up again. So this has been the trend last 2-3 days. And hopefully it will continue, just not what Urooj and Anil Kumble wants, but, let's hope it continues.
What makes you think Anil Kumble wants like a game where Pakistan go through, or he's not hoping for an India-Pakistan final, for the sake of...
I think we want a good game of cricket. More importantly, exactly. I think, from a Pakistan perspective, I think we have spoken about all the bowlers and the new batters who have come in. I mean, from my perspective, I think in a big game like this, you want the big guns to fire. A Babar Azam, a Mohammad Rizwan. He hasn't been, I'm a bit disappointed, not in front of the wicket. Yes, he hasn't had too many runs, but behind the stumps as well. He hasn't had his moments. He's had his moments behind the stumps where he's missed a few chances. So that's something that I think Pakistan can't afford in a big game like this.
Yep, there is plenty that we'd like to still see in a proper game of cricket. Let's hope we get there. That's unfortunately all the time we've got and all the news we can manage. Keep an eye out on whether that team changes if it is a reduced game. That should make for a fun conversation. But Urooj, Mumtaz, Farveez Maharoof, Anil Kumble and myself will be back as soon as we have a better idea. If we do get a quick enough game with not much of a reduction, then we'll be back at the end of the first innings. So just follow the ESPN Cricket for mobile app, download it if you haven't already, and our live commentary page will also have you covered with the very latest from what looks like a very gloomy looking Colombo. So look forward to your company again then on Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricket for Matchday, powered by JBL.
Stunning looks, then swift.
Make sure you download the ESPN Cricket Info app to stay updated with the very latest from the world of cricket.